control and how it works.
How'd you feel?
My bike felt terrible on those turns back there. How was yours?
Not too bad, but I didn't have as much grip as I'd like. The roads must have been really slippery.
I think I need to play around with the suspension a little bit. You know how to do that?
Yeah, but not enough. Hey, are there any suspension settings in that twist of the wrist 2 book that guy gave us?
Hold on. It says here that understanding the performance specifications of your bike is one step in reducing throttle control survival reactions that detract from your riding.
Sounds about right. What does that mean?
Considering that most machines in a static or constant speed situation have roughly 50-50 weight distribution, we can begin to calculate the guidelines for correct throttle control through a turn. The fact the rear contact patch is the larger of the two tells the story. Give me more weight, I can handle it. So, once in the corner, our task is to shift 10 to 20% more load to the rear to give it its fair share of load. This we do with the throttle. Technically speaking, we want a slight 0.1 to 0.2 Gs of acceleration to accomplish that. Simply put, in a straight line, it's the force generated by a smooth fifth gear roll-on in the 4 to 6,000 RPM range on pretty much anything over 600cc. That's not much acceleration, but it transfers the weight. Whatever the RPM range, we must maintain the weight transfer by continuing our throttle roll-on. Throttle control rule number 1. Once the throttle is cracked open, it is rolled on evenly, smoothly and continuously throughout the remainder of the turn. This is not just a racing technique. It applies to all corners on all motorcycles. Once the correct transfer of weight is achieved using the throttle, any big changes in that weight distribution will reduce available traction, which is especially important in poor traction conditions. Once the bike is fully leaned over, violating rule number 1 with poor throttle control will underweight or overweight that particular tyre bike combination. Here again, even in poor traction conditions, good throttle control gives maximum stability and grip. Slides aren't the only negative result from rolling the throttle on and off. For track riding and racing, each throttle on off or even just a hesitation will cost you time. At least 1/10 of a second, about a bike length, in a slow to medium speed turn. In higher speed turns, the same throttle error will cost you even more. The effects of wind drag are substantial at higher speeds.
If the surface is slippery, do you want to overload the front or rear tires?
No!
Correct. If you're rough or inconsistent with your throttle control, will it reduce traction?
Yes!
Exactly. If you have good throttle control, will the weight be distributed properly on both the front and rear tire?
Yes!
Exactly. Now, what is throttle control rule number 1?
Once the throttle is cracked open, it is rolled on evenly, smoothly, and constantly throughout the remainder of the turn.
Good. Now, repeat that to yourself 1,000 times.
Once the throttle is cracked open, it is rolled.
This rider is late on the gas and gets very hard sudden acceleration out of the turn. This rider is trying for good throttle control and has nice clean roll-on, not the same fierce acceleration as the first guy. But what is the actual result in exit speed? Let's look at the radar. a huge difference. There are two circumstances under which you may violate throttle control rule number 1. Let's take the point where you are bringing the bike up for the drive out of the corner as the first one. As the bike is brought up towards vertical, we can be more aggressive with the throttle. At some point, you can pin it.
Coordinating your throttle roll-on with bringing up the bike is how to maximize your drive off of any corner on any size bike.
Most riders wait until the bike is nearly upright before they increase the roll-on rate. The skill of it is in accurate timing of the pick-up and roll-on. What difference does it make? Quite a lot. The second exception to throttle control rule number 1 is traction control. Riders can be far more aggressive with mid-corner and exit throttle. Double apex turns are the other exception to the throttle control rule. Since you're actually dealing with 2 turns, it's okay to roll off or stop the roll-on between the 2.
He's not smooth with the gas. I bet his wrist hurt. Told ya.
What are you looking at, kid?
Your tires.
What do you kids know about riding?
Once the throttle is cracked open, it is rolled on evenly, smoothly, and constantly throughout the remainder of the turn. How long have you guys been riding?
About 3 months.
Have you guys ever been at a riding school?
No, but we got this book this guy gave us.
Yeah, just keep reading it.
Come on, boys. It's time to go.
At some of those places, I just couldn't help myself. I kept rolling in and out of the throttle.
Yeah, that was cool. Completely perfect the whole time.
Really? That's funny, because I still can't get a continuous roll on.
That's SR1. Rolling out of and on and off the throttle when you shouldn't.
That's right. Survivor reactions. How could I forget that?
Good handling means predictable traction, and good traction depends on your suspension working well. In mid-corner, on a properly set up bike, the forks and shock work best in roughly their mid-stroke range. With good throttle control, you can see the forks working in their mid-stroke in mid-corner. Is that as good as it gets? Is the bike happy? Are you happy when the bike is happy? Yes, yes, and yes.
At what range do we want the rear shock to operate? In the middle, of course. That's its most compliant range. That's its sweet spot, just like the forks.
Once you get back on the throttle, weight begins to transfer to the rear. The rear shock becomes our main concern because we must now rely on it more for stability and traction. Contrary to popular opinion, getting on the gas hard makes the back of the bike rise. That applies to both chain and shaft drive bikes. As it rises, the rear suspension becomes stiff. This results in the rear tyre not being able to follow the road's surface as well, and traction is reduced. This becomes abundantly clear when we look at front wheel speed compared to rear wheel speed on a straight. There is quite a bit of tyre slippage, and look at the rear suspension's position. Nearly topped out. Again, it isn't working well. With good throttle control, we get what the bike is designed to deliver: working suspension and optimum traction. Another downside of survival reaction number 1, chopping the throttle, is reduced ground clearance. Not only does the front compress, so does the rear, which further reduces your clearance.
Perfect examples. When the rider is hard on the brakes, the front end wheel feels heavy. Under braking, of course. Check it out. Man, he is smooth. Good throttle control allows the suspension to work properly, and the bike is smooth. Let's see if we can catch him.
Our new riders might have grasped the idea of good throttle control, but they certainly haven't mastered it yet.
Bye. I figured you guys would come this way.
Well, we figured out why you're so smooth.
They've got it. Your forks, shock, and suspension settings create the potential for good handling. Your throttle control brings that potential into reality.
Good throttle control has a major impact on slides. In controlled slides like these, good throttle control maintains stability. In unwanted or unexpected slides, chopping it makes it worse. Watch this. Good throttle control in reverse can save you from the high side. His smooth roll-off works much better. Practice your roll-off as often as your roll-on. When the time comes, it could make all the difference. Without getting into anything really nasty, like oil on the road, what are the usual conditions that activate our off-the-gas SRs? How about some of these? Water and sand are two big concerns for most riders. While you must not be aggressive with the throttle in situations like this, you certainly don't want to chop it either. What is your best bet if it's really slippery? Well, pick it up as best you can. The less lean angle, the better.
Looks like good throttle control solves many of our rider problems, doesn't it?
Yes!
There are many factors that affect what line a rider may take through a turn, and we'll explore that later. The point we want to make now is this: no matter what line you take, high, low, middle, whatever, good throttle control is the gauge by which you can judge it. Riders are often confused about why the bike initially stands up and runs wide when they get off the gas mid-turn. Once into your lean and the gas is rolled off, weight transfers to the front of the bike, compressing the forks. That weight goes to the front tyre and spreads out the contact patch. This creates additional drag on the patch to the inside of the centre line of the bike. That drag countersteers the bike upwards and it runs wide. The whole thing can seem confusing, especially as the rider expects to tighten the turn when he rolls off the gas, and he finds the opposite of that happening. A moment later, since the gas is off, the bike slows, leans further over, and finally tightens up the turn. Applying brakes mid-corner creates the same effect. When the weight transfers forward, the result is the same. The bike stands up. A static throttle slows the bike as well. Again, the bike tends to run wide. This effect is even more pronounced at higher speeds and steeper lean angles. Getting on the gas too hard too soon will also send the bike offline, wide. Getting on the throttle too slowly makes the bike feel unresponsive. As we see here, with good throttle control, the bike looks and feels stable on its line and leaves the corner faster. Getting the feel for how much throttle the bike wants and needs to be stable and have good traction and hold its line is the art of good throttle control. There are choices in lines, but the good ones follow